Can you explain a little bit about who you are?
My name is Dave Arnspiger. I go by DaveTRON on most websites. A lot of people know me by that handle. I am a Tron fan from basically pre-movie. I played the game before I saw the movie. I was an arcade rat back in the 80s, and I was pretty much the king of the game in my neighborhood. I love Tron, and it's been a huge part of my life, which I'm pretty sure is what we're about to discuss.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess what is like, do you remember your very first experience with Tron, the game?
With the game, it was at a place called Pinball Plus in Burbank, California, a little hole-in-the-wall arcade that had about 25 machines, maybe. Um, and my friends and I went in there when it first came out. There was a long line to play it. Once I finally got onto it, I was hooked, and I spent an inordinate amount of time and a lot of my money from my pizza job finding locations that had it and spending as much money as I could on perfecting my skills. I didn't save a lot of money back in those days.
I guess at what point did like when the film then came out, did you instantly go watch it, I guess being a fan of the game?
Yeah, I went to a theater in North Hollywood and saw it at a late showing at about, I think it was about 9 o'clock at night. Um, Absolutely loved the movie. Didn't realize the effect it would have on me at that point. I saw it a few more times after that. I went out and bought a poster for my room, which I still have. It's hanging on the wall over here behind me. Not this one, but one over that way. Um, and for the next few years, it was just I was a fan of Tron until I got a little older and a few other incidents happened.
And to you, what does like being a Tron fan, what does that actually mean to you?
What it did for me was it stimulated sort of a creativity in me that I had not found before in my life. It's hard to describe. It basically created a vision of what was possible for me. Um, Whether or not I knew it at the time when I was 18, it sort of led me down a path where I was in my late 20s, about 10 years later, when suddenly it opened up a lot of doors for me. Yeah, it sort of showed me what was possible, and eventually I got the clue and followed along.
How did you later on actually get involved?
So I was a big fan of the internet when it first started out, dial-up services and stuff like that, and bulletin board systems. And for anybody who remembers bulletin board systems, the precursor of AOL and stuff like that. Um, I dialed into this one bulletin board system, and it had a picture of the Tron logo, just a black and white image of the Tron logo. And at the bottom, it said, brought to you by the Disney BBS. And I was like, ooh, okay, they got to have a lot more Tron stuff there. And so I dialed into that BBS system, and it turned out to be the BBS for the Disney software division of Disney. Turned out they didn't have anything else for Tron, just that one image. And but they had a job posting, and at the time I had been a consultant to a lot of different companies. My computer skills were pretty high level at that point, and so I applied for the job. They didn't believe my skill set. I had like a two-page list of things I could do that was attached to my resume, and they thought I was full of crap. So they brought me in for an interview, and when they couldn't poke any holes in my resume, they hired me. Um, and that sort of lit a fuse under me. That was sort of the point where I thought, if I'm going to work at Disney, I want to help make a game. Um, and in the first time I worked at Disney, I didn't get on, wasn't on their radar at that point. Later on, after I left the company, I went to Activision for a few years, and one of the main production guys at Activision had left the company and gone over to Disney, and they were starting up Tron 2.0, the video game, and he knew I was a huge Tron fan, and he liked what my work. I ran the QA department at Activision, and so he brought me back over to Disney, and that opened up some new opportunities there. So that's kind of how I got involved initially.
With what you were saying about kind of like your extensive knowledge and passion for computers, do you think that came before Tron and then informed why you loved it so much, or was it the other way around?
I think it was sort of stimulated by Tron. I didn't know much about computers until I sort of fell into it. I had failed my way out of several jobs, and I was about to move out of Los Angeles, and my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, encouraged me to stick around, and I went to a tech school. I studied computerized accounting at this tech school. And by the time I was in like the third week at the tech school, I was teaching the teachers how to do things in Excel and work. I had automated most of my classes with macros and things like that. And they were like, "You can do that?" And I'm like, "Sure, it's easy." And it just, that part of my brain just sort of woke up. Suddenly, computers were this big part of my life. And that got me into the bulletin board systems and learning more about connecting with other computers, and then ultimately finding that Tron image and starting off on that path into the gaming industry. So I went from Disney Software to Activision, back to Disney Interactive. And then from there, I sort of moved around a wee bit until I left Disney. I went off to THQ for a while. And then I had a gap of about a year or two when I moved to Colorado, where I live now. And a friend of mine who I'd worked with at Activision had called me up and said, "Hey, there's this job opportunity with Arcade 1-Up." And he goes, "And we want to make a Tron machine." He says, "Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah." So that was sort of my third bite of the apple, was I got to go to Arcade 1-Up and work on their Tron machine, which was a passion project for me. So it kind of brought everything back in a nice little dovetail, going from being a fan of the arcade machine back to building the arcade machine.
How did everything kind of fall into place into leading you to work on then Tron 2.0? And what was your role?
So I was the head of the quality assurance and testing department for Disney Interactive, and I ran the team of people that worked on the game. We actually had a very small team. I'm used to working at Activision. I'd have like 250, 300 people working on a game. At Disney, I had 8, I think. A very tight little team, really good testers. But Frank Evers, the guy who was running production at the time, brought me over to work on that. One of the first things I did when I got there, I worked with a guy named Sam Palinuk, who was in charge of developing the game at that point in time. And he had written a little short story treatment for the game that was not very well fleshed out. So he got with me, since he knew I was a big Tron nut, and asked me to write a treatment for it. So we wrote something called Tron Y2K, which was it was a fun game idea. We basically decided we kind of went the same route as Tron 2.0 and Legacy. There was a child of, in this case, Flynn. It was Flynn's son. And he had to go into the computer to find his dad. And he had to break in through the old MCP. They had the MCP locked up in a basement somewhere, isolated. And they were going to use it to break into these systems because somebody had opened up a virus that was sort of like a protection virus for the MCP, and it had infected all the other systems, and you couldn't get in unless you went through this route. And we had this whole game, you sort of fought your way in. You got to this point where you've won the game, you've beaten the bad guy, and then in the distance you see everything in your army turning red because the MCP's been taking it over behind you. Now you have to fight your way back out again. And that was our game idea. And it was pretty cool, but the problem was we came up with the idea like 5 months before Y2K hit, and there was no way in hell we were going to get it done in time. And doing it after the fact wasn't fun. So right about the same time, Monolith came in with their idea for Tron 2.0, and it was off to the races at that point, and we built that game.
Do you think Monolith...
I say we. I mean, I tested it. It should work.
Do you think Monolith... Because, like you said, there are similarities with the concept of Tron Y2K and the product of Tron 2.0. Was there at all any like intermingling or like inspiration there?
I don't know. I mean, I know the Monolith guys saw our idea. They probably laughed us out of the room at some point, because they had their own ideas. There was a lot going on at that point because the movie division was thinking about making a movie, and they kind of wanted something that was a springboard for that. There were, in 2002 when they did the 20th anniversary DVDs, they put a little trailer on there for Tron Killer App, which was one of the names for the Monolith game early on. and ultimately came back around when they did the Xbox version. Um, and I think they just decided to go with a better story than the Y2K story. I think if we had not included the Y2K aspect and done something a little different, maybe that idea would have grown into something bigger. But unfortunately, we were too linked to that, and it didn't fly.
I mean, you touched on it kind of almost feeling like a full circle moment, but was there ever any imposter syndrome going from a Tron fan to then being someone involved actually in a Tron product?
No, I never felt imposter syndrome necessarily. What it afforded me was some interesting opportunities. So once we got into sort of full bore development and got to a point where there's a playable game, the company started bringing in Steven Lisberger and Sid Mead and a few other people to look at the game in progress and give their input. And through the course of those meetings, since my office was basically a shrine to Tron, I had everything, every single wall was covered with Tron stuff. We would do the demos in my office. And so one day, Lisberger and Richard Taylor, one of the production team, were in my office looking at the game. And Steven kept saying things about the movie, and I kept correcting him. And everybody kept looking at me like I was going to piss him off. And at one point, he stopped and he turned to me and he goes, "You know more about my movie than I do," um, which is not the least bit true, but I did know a lot. And so we got a little bit of a friendship going at that point. A little later on, we had a signing with them. I'll go back to Sid, I guess, in a second, but we had a signing at E3 in 2003, I think it was. And Steven and Richard and Cindy Morgan and Bruce Boxleitner signed at a table. And after the event, Steven told me, he goes, "I've been going through all my boxes of stuff at my house." He says, "You want to come down and check this stuff out?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to come down and see what you got." So I went to his house in Santa Monica and we pulled out all these boxes. And the one thing that we both noted right off the bat was that he lives near the ocean, so the sea air was sort of deteriorating everything. And I came up with the brilliant idea of digitizing everything, creating an archive for him. And he liked the idea. So basically, this man who'd only known me for a couple of months let me take all of his boxes home with me to Burbank, California, and scan all of that into the computer. And we created what we call the Tron Archives now, which is basically a private archive. It's only used for people, with projects that relate to the movies or whatever. But I'm sort of fanatical about collecting information, so I put everything in there. So it's got everything from fan art to scripts, and it's huge. It used to be just a couple of DVDs worth of stuff, and now it's like probably 40 DVDs worth of stuff. It's massive. It's on a 5 terabyte hard drive that's actually connected to this computer, believe it or not. And it's just, anything I can get my hands on that's Tron related. Like I'm going insane right now collecting Ares stuff. And I categorize it and put them in folders and it's so if someone ever needs it, they can look through it. I mean, Joseph Kaczynski came to my house one time and looked through it for something for Legacy. I think he used a couple of images in the scene where you see all the televisions. I think he may have used some stuff there. I'm not 100% sure, but it sure looked like it. But that was fun, and it got me to meet Sid. Sid actually came in the year before Steven, and he was in a big meeting with us, and I had my Light Cycle toys. I had all the original Tomy toys in a box, basically a clear plastic box. And Sid was sitting at the table holding it and looking at them, and he kept turning it around, looking at all the angles on it. So I went over and talked to him, and I said, "You seem really interested." And he goes, "I've never seen these before." He goes, "Nobody ever gave me a set of these things." So I said, "Well, then they're yours." And I had paid about $250 for them, so my wife was not happy with me. But it was Sid Mead, and it's his design. And then the funny part was after he passed, his partner Roger sold them for $50. So I had to give him a call and razz him on that. I'm like, "Dude, you could have made way more money."
Yeah, that's a blow.
But that got me connected to Sid. Yeah, and Sid provided materials for the archives, and then eventually, Harrison Ellenshaw loaned me all his stuff. He had a lot of codoliths and things like that, and we scanned all that in. There's a massive archive of pictures, so if people need pictures from Tron, I actually have, I'm told, I have more materials from Tron than the Disney people do.
And
So
how does
several
that
people have commented it's very hard to get Tron out.
how does that feel? I mean, being like kind of at the center of everything to do with Tron, you know?
Fun. I mean, I don't look at it as work. I look at it as something it's something I really, really enjoy, you
Mm.
know. A lot of people go, God, why do you spend so much time cataloging all this stuff and putting it in folders? Do you ever look at it? And I'm like, hell yeah, I look at it all the time. Um, I'll go through and rethink areas and cut down on what I have, kind of condense it into one area. Um, I'm constantly thinking about it. And, whenever I see somebody post something online where they got a question and I can answer it and share something, I do. Um, it's been a blast. I mean, it's created friendships for me. I know I met Cindy, I met Dan Shore, I met all these guys from the production team. Um, Steven and I talk on a fairly regular basis. I mean, we're not like best buddies or anything, but he's a good friend. And if I have a question, I can just call him up and ask him, and it's not a big deal. Um, I think it's because I don't act like a fanboy with him all the time.
Mm.
I just act like a guy who's interested in, you know, doing things for his movie. Um, that sort of endeared me to him. I don't know. You'd have to ask him. He may look at me as that psychopath who collects all the Tron stuff and keeps bothering me every couple months, but um, I don't think so. But no, it's been good. I've become friends with a lot of neat people, and instead of them just being heroes from afar, they're my heroes that I get to talk to when I want to. So
Does that ever
it's great. It's been a blast.
does that ever get weird? Just the fact that like you grew up watching them on a screen and now you actually get to interact with them and then they get to come to you for help about this thing that you used to love.
It gets weird it really gets weird when other people want access to them. People try to come through me and go, "Hey, I need you to connect me up with Steven. I need to talk to him about this." I'm like, I don't know that I want to do that. Sometimes I'll just shut it down outright because it doesn't feel right to do it. Every once in a while, somebody will come up with a good reason, like they're writing an article or, they're doing a video about Tron or something like that. And I'll write to Steven privately and I'll just say, "Hey, are you interested in talking to this person?" And he'll tell me yes or no. And we'll move along. Um, so that's usually when it's weird. Um, every once in a while, we've been at events once in a while where people look at me funny. They go, "You're not part of the team." Then somebody will go, "Yes, he is," and flag me over. Um, so yeah, it's weird, and I don't count on it. I don't expect to be treated that way. I mean, it's like, I'm just sort of a super fan. I don't consider myself, an integral part of the Tron team. It would be nice to be that, but I'm really just an archivist and a fan, and I'm available to them if they need me. So
Mm.
that's kind of how I see it. So, but yeah, no, it's not weird.
Do you have any like fun stories, just anecdotal stuff from your time actually being in the world of Tron?
I was actually just talking to somebody about this today. Stephen and I had lunch once in Santa Monica. He's been doing a lot of interviews right now where he's talking about the genesis of the story for Ares coming from some ideas that he had back in the early 2000s for, he did a script or a story idea about warring search engines, and he's been talking about that. And then there was sort of this storyline that evolved into an Icarus kind of thing, flying too close to the sun, trying to get out. And elements of that went into Legacy, and the lineage is definitely part of Ares as well. You can see it very clearly if you know what you're looking for. But he and I sat at a table in this restaurant in Santa Monica that had paper tabletops, and he got a pencil out and basically wrote out his story idea for a next movie on this tabletop, which actually is sitting right over there. It wouldn't make sense if I showed it, but basically it's a big white tablecloth with Steven's handwritten notes going from the search engine story up into this Icarus storyline. And it was kind of the genesis for him of what was going to come next. And this was back in like 2004, 2005 somewhere. So it was pre-Legacy.
Wow.
And it was just a blast, seeing him think out loud and write all this stuff down on a tabletop. So that was a lot of fun. And, At E3, Bruce Boxleitner will hate me for telling this story, but we were at E3 when they were doing their signing, and everything was sort of over, and we were backstage, and everybody was standing there, and Bruce Boxleitner suddenly puts his hands on his hips and goes, "Tron has to pee. Where are the bathrooms?" And I had to point him to the bathroom. And, just being silly. One time I went to an autograph show with Cindy and Bruce in Burbank, California, and they were there to do, they called them celebrity petting zoos, or Cindy did anyway. But anyway, they're sitting there at the table, and Jay Maynard, the Tron guy, came with, and he was standing next to Bruce, and Bruce just kept looking at him like, "Who is this guy? What is this?" You know, he was really freaked out by the whole thing. So I got to see stuff like that. It was fun. I never really connected with Bruce for some reason. I don't know why. It never happened. I mean, I talked to him several times. I've got pictures with him. He's a movie star, so he's probably a little guarded about how he connects to people. But Cindy was really open. We had a guest house behind her house. When she came out for shows, she would stay in our guest house and hang out, and we just had good times. It was fun, and now I'm in Colorado, so I'm sort of far away from it, but I still connected via internet and phone when needed. So I'd love to be around next week for the premiere. That'd be awesome to be over in that area. But I'm just trying to think if there's anything else good I can tell you there. Just lots of good times. Just hanging out. We had a dinner in Steven's backyard one night with some of the production team, and here I am, this little neophyte to the group, and I got invited with my wife, and we got to sit and have dinner with him in Steven's backyard. It's fun to be treated like part of the group. It's just, there was no weirdness to it. It's just, here's Dave. He's a Tron fan. He's having dinner with us. It's like, it was great. So I like it.
And it's funny.
Don't know if that answered your question.
No, definitely. And it's interesting. I wanted to ask also about, because you said you had met Landry Q. Walker, and he actually said that he had a similar experience with Bruce Boxleitner, where he got along really well with Cindy Morgan, and with Bruce Boxleitner it wasn't at all like negative or anything. It's just Bruce Boxleitner didn't know who he was, so there wasn't much point of connection, I guess.
Yeah, I think the difference with Bruce was it was probably a little more fanboy when I first met him. And when you meet these people, I worked at Warner Brothers as a security guard, and I worked in the main building where the casting offices were. So I had to learn very quickly how to treat these people that are coming in for casting. So I met, like Elton John and Mel Gibson and Michelle Pfeiffer. I had a long conversation one day with Dolly Parton in my lobby. She got there an hour early. They invited her to come sit upstairs in the lobby and wait for her meeting. And she's like, "No, I'm going to stay down here with Dave and talk." And I kind of learned over time. Clint Eastwood walked through my lobby every morning, and I would go, "Good morning, Mr. Eastwood." And for like 2 weeks I said that. And at the end of the second week, he stopped and shook my hand. He says, "Call me Clint." And it's, wow. It's like, you show them respect, and they kind of get used to you, when you're not being that fanboy scenario. And I think with Bruce, maybe the vibe was more fanboy. And so I could understand someone like him being guarded about, who he lets into his world. And it's not like I had any expectations of becoming part of his world, but it's just like, hey, I've made friends with Cindy. Maybe I can be friends with Bruce too,
Yeah.
I got too geeky, maybe, maybe that was Landry's problem too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met Landry at Comic-Con in 2003, I think, when they were promoting the comic book. And, I talked to him many times on the phone too, because he knew I was a Tron nerd. I don't know how much of this he'll remember, but we had some fairly extensive conversations about Tron on the phone. And I gave him some ideas for the comic book. I've actually got a thanks in the Ghost of the Machine comic for whatever small amount of help I provided. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, so I could totally get Bruce's point of view. I don't want to deal with these fanboys, and I'm just going to go back over here into my world. So it totally makes sense.
Do you think you went about it a little more fanboy because it's Tron.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, standing there with Tron, um, I think his interactions with me at E3 were basically I was one of the Disney staff, and I don't think he understood the relationships that were already there with Cindy and Richard and Steven at that point.
Mm.
And there's nothing uncool about him. He's a great guy, really nice. If you ask him a question, he'll talk to you. Um, so I'm not casting any aspersions on Bruce Boxleitner. I love the guy, but he just, sort of a protective mode for himself, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
And I feel like also to an extent that's kind of necessary if you are in a position where like you are the titular
yeah,
character of a classic movie, you know.
yeah. Everybody wants something from you. They want autographs. They want, um, I can totally understand
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So,
Um, yeah, I also wanted to ask because I saw uh, the website Traumatic Studios, so I wanted to ask a little about that.
it's Traumantic Studios with an N.
Traumatic.
Um, Traumantic. Yeah, it's a word my son made up. He was watching Star Wars, and the big ship comes on at the beginning, and it's flying in, and he came and yelled out what was either going to be tremendous or gigantic. I'm not sure which word he planned to say, but he smashed them together. Traumantic came out, and I decided that no one else would ever use that name. So I named my, at the time, fledgling consulting company that, and then I sort of switched to photography later on and just called it Traumantic Studios. Strangely enough, somebody did finally end up using the word for a song. There's a band called Candy Ambulance that has a song called Traumantic, and we had brief discussions about that. No lawsuits between anybody, and it was, just they had their version and I have my version.
Mm.
I've been around a lot longer, so. But yeah, it was fine by me. It's like I thought it was pretty cool. So, but yeah, it's nowadays it's my company. I don't make any money at it. I just do photography for fun, basically. And I did headshots for Cindy at one point. She used it as her main headshot for probably about 2 years. I did some headshots for Dan Shore too, but they weren't great. I don't think he ever wanted to use them, but he did sit for me, so it was fun. I was still learning at that point. Actually, with Cindy, the funny part of that story is I took over 5,000 images of her the day that we shot those. I mean, she very patiently sat for me. We took picture after picture after picture, almost wore my camera out. Out of those 5,000 images, the one that she used is the only one that was decent. There was one image. There were a few others that were okay, but that was the one that was good. And just so happened she used it. Another company used it to promote their printing services and stuff like that. It was nice to see it happen, and it was a great thing for her to do for me. It was sort of repayment for letting her stay in our house. Hey, I'll sit for you. But I can imagine the torture for her having her picture taken 5,000 times in one day. So she never complained about it, but it must have been painful. So, but we got something out of it, so we were both happy.
Mhm.
So.
And I saw on the website that you uh, took pictures with of the Tron Legacy premiere. So I just wanted to ask how, because a lot of like for this video I've talked to mainly people who grew up on the original Tron film, whereas I'm coming from the perspective of someone who grew up, like I had watched the original Tron first, but I mainly grew up with Tron Legacy. So there's always been like, yeah, I love Tron. Tron Legacy exists, So I guess, what do you think about Tron Legacy?
I love it, actually. I I really wish Tron 2.0 had stayed canon and then maybe they had spun off of that and done Legacy. It would have been cool. I have a soft spot for Tron 2.0 because I worked on it. But obviously that didn't happen. But I love the concept of where they went with Flynn being stuck in the computer and Sam having to go in and rescue him. And how all that played out. I thought it was a brilliant follow-up to Tron. I mean, how do you take a film that at that point was, how old was it? I forget how long it was between movies. It was like
28 years.
25 years,
Yeah.
28 years. Yeah, okay. Um, and you know, how do you take that first movie and modernize it and bring it into the future? And I think they did a really solid job of bringing that up there. Um, I don't really have any major quibbles with the movie. I'm a huge fan, and in actuality, because I know, you know, some of the background story on how the stories were developed, and you know who was writing them and whose ideas were getting involved and stuff like that. I kind of see the DNA from the first one to the second one, and now to the third one. You know, I mentioned earlier the story that Stephen had written out on the tabletop. There's probably strong elements of that tabletop story in Ares. You know, I know that Stephen has had a voice in what people are doing, if not outright. You know, he's not outright writing the scripts or anything like that, but he's definitely got input into what they're doing because it's his world. Um, so I definitely see the DNA in all three movies. I'm really excited to see Ares because I think it's going to be a good flick. Um, at least I hope it's going to be a good. I mean, from everything I've seen so far, you know, I'm one of those people who likes to watch all of the trailers and I like to know all the information. I like to know the ending of a movie before I go see it. I'm weird that way. I have an uncle who tells me I'm completely insane for doing it that way, but I like it because then I put all the pieces together when I watch it. And the example that I will give is the recent Superman movie. I watched all of the clips that were available on YouTube and I hated every single one of them. I couldn't stand what I was seeing. It was just bad to me. And so when the movie came out recently on HBO, I watched the entire movie because people had told me, well, your opinion's not valid about Superman unless you've seen the whole movie. So I sat down and I watched the whole movie. Well, my opinion was exactly right. The only scenes that I hadn't seen made it worse, you know. And I truly just hated everything about Superman. I can watch Tron with a critical eye. You know, I still have the fanboy side, but I've been watching everything that I've been seeing in Ares, and I see the pieces coming together. I think I know what's going to happen in the movie. I don't know what's going to happen in the movie, but I have a pretty good idea, and I really like where it's going. And I'm very, very positive about it at this point. I mean, God forbid I go into the theater and they do something completely weird and, you know, fuck it up entirely. Pardon my French. Um, uh, and you know, I come out dissatisfied, but I really don't see that happening. So from everything I've seen so far, it looks really good.
I guess I wanted
So
to ask about, because you said like you like knowing the behind the scenes a little better, you can see kind of the DNA and how it's connected each installment. Like you would understand that better than an audience member would. So is there anything there that you could talk about? Just because, like, especially with Ares, in researching for this video, I have found it a bit confusing. Uh, like, what's his name? Jesse Wigatow and David DeGillo. They were supposed to write Tron Legacy, and I think they're writing Tron Ares, or at least they have writing credits. So, like, all of this stuff, to me, not knowing the complete context can get quite confusing. So, yeah.
so how to describe this? So the DNA from Tron to Tron Legacy is the family aspect of it, the connection to you know, his father, wanting to understand, you know, what was going on with him and having to go find him once he disappeared. You know, it was very much a family thread. Um, in the movie, you've got Clue trying to get out of the computer into the real world. That is basically Steven's Icarus storyline, that he was talking about. Is there was a character, I forget what the character was called. It wasn't called Icarus, but he basically wanted to get out of the computer into the real world. As I recall, it was for more personal reasons. It wasn't to bring an army forward. It was just to get out. You know, he wanted to explore outside. They wanted to explore inside. So that DNA is in Legacy. You take that forward to what we're seeing with Ares, is now Ares is being brought out by the Dillinger team into the real world, and they're going to lose control of him, and he's going to, well, the people he's working with are going to try to destroy the world, and he's going to try to save it and be the hero. I think that's all pretty obvious. I'm not giving away anything. And to be honest, I don't know anything. I mean, I know as much as everybody else does from the trailers that I've seen. But I can see the bits and pieces of the stories that have been talked about over the years. There was Joe Kosinski had the Ascension storyline that he wanted to do, which was essentially more of the Icarus type story. And I'm not privy to all the background conversations on these. This is just what I've gleaned from talking to Steven and talking to other people. But it's always been sort of heading this way to programs coming out of the computer into the real world. Where it goes from there, completely different story. I can't imagine what a Tron 4 would look like at this point, because if you look at Ares, kind of knowing what I know and with my experiences with these people, Ares is sort of like the culmination of the storyline. I really don't know where it would go after this. And I'm not a writer, so I'm not sitting here thinking up my fanboy ideas, my fanboy script. I took my one shot at it with Y2K, and that was it. Yeah, I can just see the lineage of the three films linking together. I mean, to me, they're a very cohesive trio of movies. Other people may not see it that way because they're, not as attuned to the clues, but I definitely see it. So
I think thematically, like, there is a very obvious kind of running current between all of them. So I do agree with that. But yeah, do you think... I guess I also wanted to ask about Ascension, and like with the details that have been released about that, do you think like Kosinski and the writers were directly inspired by that Icarus idea, or was it just like coincidentally it was leading towards that anyway by the end of Legacy?
I don't really know. My guess is that, yeah, in some way it's mixed in there because it's too similar to what Steven was writing at the time and what he was thinking about. I've gotten to hear a lot of great stories from Steven on how things came together, and I can't imagine that he didn't share the same information about the Icarus story that I heard with guys like Joe Kosinski and Justin Springer and all those guys. So at some point in time that must have been shared, and it has to be part of that storyline in some way. I've never actually seen the entire Ascension script. I believe there's one out there. I've never seen it. I'd love to read it at some point. It'd be a great thing to have in the archives. You can't look at the second and third movies and not go, that's the Icarus storyline, because they're trying to get out of the computer into the real world. They obviously took it way beyond what Steven was talking about in the third movie here. And again, I don't know what he's talked to them about in the creative process for Ares. Maybe there is a lot of his voice in there. I don't know, but I know he's had meetings with them, and I know he's given them story ideas, and I can't pontificate on what those are, but there's elements of him and his ideas all the way through all three movies, I believe, and even in Tron 2.0 to an extent. I mean, he had a voice in Tron 2.0 as well. So,
and I guess that kind of links to what the next question I had, which is, because this interview is mainly focused on the films and Tron 2.0, but are you equally as obsessed with like the comic books, the other games, the Uprising?
Oh yeah. Actually, yeah, we haven't really talked about Uprising. Uprising is a really cool interstitial between these films, because it's a shame they didn't finish it, and there's a whole petition going around right now to try to revive it and bring it back for another season and finish it off, which I think would be amazing. Whether Disney's smart enough to do it, we'll see. They'll probably do some other dumb kid show that fails in a month. But shouldn't say that. I might kill the golden goose. No, I don't really have any connections to Disney, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, it would be nice to see where that storyline would have gone, because I know that there were ideas for the next season. What those were, I have no clue, but it would have been great to see. As far as the comic books go, yeah, I was a huge fan of the comic books. My set is literally sitting on my desk over there. I paw through them every once in a while. Um, the archives, as I have them right now, is basically Tron, um, Automan, which was I consider it a part of the Tron universe because it was produced by Donald Kushner, who was the producer on one of the producers on Tron, and basically used a lot of the elements of Tron to make Automan. I have a small category for Tron 2 from some of the ideas that I picked up over the years, for potential first sequel that never happened. I have all the stuff for the game, all the different versions of the Tron 2.0 game, the GBA version and the PC and the Xbox versions. Then it goes into the comic book in 2004, Kingdom Hearts 2, the Tron stages in that game. I go off into Legacy at that point and Evolution, the storylines of both of those. At some point, I would love to take all the cutscenes from all the games and make a movie out of the cutscenes. Kind of link it into, this one leads to here, this one leads to here. That would be a blast, but I've got folders for everything. I've even got the rides in Shanghai and Walt Disney World. I've got, basically if it's attached to Tron in some way, it's in my archives. I have a personal section for Cindy with all of her other shows she's done. That's just sort of a crazy offshoot for me. I was helping her with a website a long time ago, and we just started collecting things about her career and including them in her website. And I just happen to have this massive archive of Cindy stuff. I've got modeling photos from her early days, got her grade school pictures, just crazy stuff like that. I have a Sid Mead section because Sid and I used to talk all the time. He'd send me Christmas cards every year, used to invite me to parties and stuff like that. And I have some artwork that he sent me a few times. I go to events that he'd hold around town, showing off his art. So I've had all the brochures and photographs from those. Just anything linked to Tron. It's not just the movies, it's everything related to Tron. I love collecting it. I love talking about it. I love dealing with it. If there was a way to make money doing it and be paid to do this full time, I'd be happy to do it. But that would probably ruin it. Actually, it's much more fun to do it in my own time. So I do it mainly for me at this point, And to be honest, not that many people know about or care about the archives at this point. There's no connection to Aries at all with that. Legacy, they had a copy of the archives that I sent them at one point, as it was at that time. And like I said, Joe Kaczynski looked through it at one point, and then somebody in Disney somewhere has the hard drive that I sent them with that on it, whether or not they kept it. But anything I've got from Aries is just what's publicly available at this point, stuff I've gleaned from the websites and stuff. And I'm about to put up a webpage promoting the archives in a way. It's not anything people are going to be able to go in and look at, but I can tell them what's in the archives and encourage them, if they have things to contribute to it, please do. Because I sort of look at it as an incoming library, not an outgoing library. It's things that should be preserved about Tron. And I'm not kidding. If somebody's got a picture of themselves in Tron underoos, then I want that in the archives. Excuse me. Sorry, that's a really silly idea, but somebody posted a picture of their fingernails the other night. They have their fingernails painted up for Tron in legacy colors with lines and stuff like that. And they're in the archives now. So I grab all of that stuff and I categorize it, put it away, try to tag everything with names. It's just insane at this point. Someday when I pass on, I have no idea who'll take it over from me, but I'll find somebody to take it on. So
do you think
maybe I can get one of my grandkids interested in Tron.
Do you think my video is going to make it in the archives?
What's that?
Do you think my video is going to make it in the archives?
Oh, absolutely. If you send me a copy, I will absolutely put it in the archives.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
I love it. It's good. You'll become a permanent member. So.
But
This is fun. By the way, I'm looking at the right place for the camera, so if my eyes seem weird throughout this video, it's because I have no idea where I'm looking right now.
to be honest, I'm
Yeah.
the exact same, because I'm having to use my phone as a webcam because my PC doesn't have a webcam, so it's a little all over the place.
Cool. Well, hopefully it's not too weird.
as we get closer to the end, I also wanted to ask a little about um, Identity and Catalyst and just like Bithell games in general. Like, have you played those games?
I've only seen videos of them. I don't have the systems to play them. My job is to play games. I'm a gamer at work, and as soon as I'm done with work at the end of the day, the last thing I want to play games.
Mm.
Um, so I've never bought a PlayStation or anything like that. I think they're both on PlayStation, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe Steam. I don't know. I haven't invested in Steam either. But yeah, I've only seen them in video format. I'm actually, I hate to say it, not a tremendous fan of. Let's see, which one came first, Identity
Identity,
or
yeah.
Catalyst? Yeah, Identity was more of a story-driven thing, and I worked on a bunch of those kind of games back in my Activision days, and I kind of despise them. Um, I like more action and activity. It's beautiful, it's very pretty, but didn't seem like a kind of game I'd want to play. At some point in time, I'll go borrow my grandson's PS5 and plug it in and see what I got. And then Catalyst seemed like it had a little more action to it. But again, just it seemed a little more story, do this, follow this, gather this information, those kind of games just aren't that interesting to me.
Mm.
And I think any action was basically animation rather than actually playing. I don't know. Like I say, I haven't played it, so I'm judging it harshly and not having played it. But I do have categories for both of those too, so they're both in there.
Mm.
And I'm sorry to hear that Bithell is having financial troubles. I guess I don't know if they're going out of business or they just downsized. But
I
I feel
think
bad because
they had to let go of most of the people there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they were waving the flag for Tron. So even if I don't care for the games, I still am proud of them for getting those games out there and keeping Tron alive.
Mm.
One of my favorite things to talk about, actually, and we don't really have time to go into this in depth, but is that Tron has had something about it released every single year since it initially came out. Whether it was a toy or a button or a T-shirt or something, every single year from 1982 pretty much until now, there has been a product of some sort for Tron,
Mm.
which in my mind keeps it as part of the, what do they call that, the zeitgeist or the
Yeah.
the consciousness of the world. There's a thread all the way through that's kind of fun. There were toys in the late 80s and mid 90s when there weren't any movies, and I've got pictures of T-shirts that go all the way back to 1983, 1984. The videos came out, and then the redos, and then the 20th anniversary versions, and then the high def versions, and it's just amazing how much product there is and how much promotion there's been around Tron. And people talk about how Disney doesn't care about it, but they do. They make a lot of money off of Tron. Maybe not billions, but they definitely make millions.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a thing I go into in the video where, like, a lot of the discourse is like, oh, why doesn't Disney care? But realistically, considering Tron isn't the most profitable thing for Disney, like, they just wouldn't keep making it if they didn't care. They very much do have the option to just be like, okay, this isn't as, financially profitable as a Star Wars or Indiana Jones, so we're dropping it. But they haven't done that.
the funny part is, and I can provide information on this. There was one guy that fucked it up. He was a stock market guy. He came to a screening with Disney. The next day, he posted just a scathing review of the film, how bad it was, and that sort of overnight. Oh my God! I actually snapped my fingers. I'm physically incapable. Overnight, he changed the course of the movie. People started going, "Oh, it's a bad movie. We're not going to promote it as much." I think Disney backed off a little bit at that point, and you can tell from interviews at the time and his actual article and things like that that it definitely affected people and put a negative spin on the movie that I think decreased its profitability, But if you look at the numbers of things like Raiders and Star Trek 2 and some of the other movies other than E.T. were doing at the same time, Blade Runner I think was out at the same time, the numbers are pretty comparable, for what they made as well, and they are all mostly cult movies as well. And so for people to look at it as not a profitable movie the first time, sure, it wasn't a billion-dollar enterprise, it wasn't Star Wars, but it did just as well as movies like Star Trek 2 and Blade Runner and a few other things. And those movies went on and had sequels. So why not Tron? And then the argument, that Tomorrowland killed the Legacy follow-up because there wasn't enough money to make a follow-up. I've heard that argument before. Tomorrowland to me was a misunderstood movie. I love that film. And I really wish people had gotten the actual message in that movie. Because unfortunately they took the negative side of that movie and we're living it out now. But I thought that movie had a great message and was a fantastic film. And I really wish it had stimulated the next Tron movie as opposed to theoretically killing it. Then we had to wait 15 more years for them to get around to doing this. So I wonder how long. Will I still be alive when the next movie comes out? I have no idea. So we'll see. But yeah, it's Tron has had a rich history. People just don't look close enough to see it. I do because I'm an archivist and I have all this information, and other people don't. But maybe that's my next goal, is to put this out there so people see it, and maybe it, in some small way, helps the next movie move along. We'll never know, or well, maybe we'll never know. Who knows? I'm talking out of my ass now. So. But yeah, I just want to see it succeed. I want to see it keep going. So be great if over the next 10 years there were 3 more movies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because it's also the case of like when people do say stuff like, "Oh, it's just not a Star Wars." It's like, yeah, but most, like 99% of films aren't a billion-dollar franchise. There's still countless sequels.
And Star Wars.
Exactly.
Star Wars. Give me Rogue One, Episode 4, Episode 5, maybe Episode 6. I don't like the Ewoks so much, and I'm pretty happy with Star Wars. Everything else, I pretty much don't care. Clone Wars, I'll watch that. I kind of like Ahsoka. I kind of like The Mandalorian. But it's really not what it used to be. So
yeah, and I think also,
I'm not its target audience anymore. So.
I think one great thing that, for me at least, puts Tron above any sort of like Star Wars thing is just the fact that with Star Wars, even when you do find something that's great, like I still haven't seen it, but people always talk about Andor and how great it is, and it's like that,
yeah.
For me, like I don't have as much of an incentive to watch Andor just because the whole Star Wars thing is so oversaturated, whereas you can't really have oversaturation with Tron because there's just not like that much, as much as a franchise like a Star Wars.
I think the thing that's different about Tron is that the storyline has stayed true to its roots basically all the way through. It's they didn't go off on weird tangents or into strange areas. It's the Tron universe, and it's built up. Star Wars has gone off in all these weird different directions. Like you're saying, it's oversaturated. And I have to say, Andor is really good. If you have time, I would definitely invest your time in it. Because, notice I went from Rogue One through the first 3 movies. I think Rogue One is a great tie-in to the first Star Wars. And Andor is basically the preceding seasons of Rogue One. So you could pretty much watch that into Rogue One and then the other 3 movies, and you've got the best of Star Wars right there. And there are other parts that tie in. The Ahsoka show was pretty good. I like that character. Wasn't entirely fond of everything about it, but it's where it's going seems interesting, so it might pick up in the second season. But some of the others just didn't, and like The Mandalorian sort of petered off for me. It was really good at the beginning, not so good, and the movie that's coming up just makes my skin crawl. So, hopefully it's good, but I'm not holding out hope. So, but we'll see. So, but now we're veering off into Star Wars territory.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Any other questions? Anything else I could?
That's actually it for the questions I had. Is there any sort of socials or anything you wanna plug?
No, I mean, there'll be a Tron Archives page. It'll be an offshoot of my Tronmantic.com page at some point. It'll be on the main menu, and you just spin off into that. Probably in about 2 weeks, that'll be up and available for people. I just figured it was kind of time to kind of share that it's out there, since I'm doing so much collecting right now for Aries, and there's sort of renewed interest in people talking to me or having me help them with various things. It's funny because somebody will call me up and go, "Hey, I heard about you through so-and-so, and I heard you might have all these materials." And it's like, well, yeah, I do, and so, I've helped with books, I've helped with a few videos and things like that, and obviously your video. So it's kind of fun to be in the background helping those things out. It's been a blast, but I think it's probably time to go, okay, I talk about it enough. I hint at the fact that it's there. I'm going to tell everybody what's in there. I'm going to tell them what the rules are for it. If they want to contribute to it, great. If they want to ask me about a project, great. But I'm not going to open it up to the whole world because there's a lot of stuff in there that's not mine to release. Yeah, I have things that have been entrusted to me that are in the archives, but are private material and not for sharing with other people. And there's other areas I wouldn't be terribly proud of either. There's a subset I call Rule 34, which, if you know what Rule 34 is, there's a whole section of Rule 34 for each movie, which, frankly, there's a little too much of that out there in the world. So, but being a completist, I collect all that too. So, I feel dirty. But it's there, and so it has to go into the archive. So, but yeah, it's something I think it's time to put it out there and start looking for an heir too. I'm 61 years old. I can't keep doing this for too long. I got to find somebody who's enthusiastic and hook them in. So, be the next generation. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that's kind of it. So
Perfect.
But this was fun. I appreciate you talking to me. I saw your post and thought that might be kind of cool. Get a chance to talk about this stuff and do something I don't normally do.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, the project is honestly so big. Like at the moment, it's currently at an hour and a half, and I have to try and finish it before Tron Ares comes out, and I still have some work to do. So it's a lot.
8 days, dude.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm working on it every day, trying to get it done.
You have my permission to cut me into whatever form you need, and I'd love it if there's a way to get me a complete copy of the video. That would be great.
Yeah,
I'd love to have it just for future reference.
I'm gonna upload it individually, and then I'm only gonna use like very small clips in the actual video, and then I'm gonna like link to it, the full video.
Cool. All right, I will grab a copy and throw it in the archives, and I'll grab your other video as well. So
Perfect.
we'll immortalize you in the archives.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Cool.